What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, first up, over the weekend, the People's Bank of China, China's central bank, published its latest quarterly monetary policy. Some sharp-eyed analysts have pointed out that the carefully worded policy has removed certain phrases that have often been seen in previous reports, including critically sticking with, quote, normal monetary policy, end quote, and not to, quote, flood the economy with stimulus, end quote. Based on these wording changes, several major banks, including Citigroup, Nomura, and Goldman Sachs Group, have told investors that the central bank is likely hinting that it will adopt more supportive measures and increase credit supply in the near future. For example, Nomura expressed that the language in the report, quote, represents an official change to the central bank's policy stance and set the stage for more decisive monetary and credit easing, end quote. It's not just international banks too that are taking the hint. Chinese financial media outlet Taiwan Media reported that any central bank easing would, quote, likely be targeted towards small businesses and green finance, end quote, and that, quote, the central bank is also likely to guide credit growth to accelerate next year, end quote. The real question, of course, is will regulators further ease the restrictions on property developers or continue to force deleveraging in the Chinese property sector? Next up, Beijing recently held its third Belt and Road Initiative Symposium, previously known as One Belt, One Road, though the symposium was presided over by Vice Premier Han Zheng. General Secretary Xi Jinping presented a speech at the event demonstrating that the initiative continues to have strong backing from China's top leader. In his speech, Xi expressed that, quote, the Belt and Road Initiative should aim for high standards, sustainable and people-centered progress, end quote, and called for, quote, stronger political mutual trust, more cooperative mechanisms, and better connectivity, network linking land, sea, air, and cyberspace, end quote. Despite lower investment levels through the Belt and Road Initiative in recent years, the BRI looks to be here to stay. In fact, you guys may remember from last week when we discussed the historical resolution published on the 6th plenum that the document incorporated Xi's flagship Belt and Road Initiative, expressing, quote, China has promoted high quality development of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, end quote, calling it a, quote, widely welcome public good and platform for international cooperation, end quote. So like I said, the Belt and Road Initiative is here to stay. Okay, Taiwan. We have been following Lithuania's recent decision to set up a Taiwanese representative office in Lithuania and of course Beijing's reaction to this decision. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian called Lithuania's action an, quote, egregious precedent, end quote. State media, of course, was less diplomatic than Mr. Zhao, with the Global Times in a piece calling Lithuania a, quote, running dog of the United States, end quote, and a, quote unquote, loyal puppet of the United States. And that, quote, the European country will eventually pay a heavy political and economic price, end quote. Well, on Monday, the People's Republic of China officially decided to downgrade diplomatic ties with Lithuania over its warming relationship with Taipei. The Foreign Ministry announced at a special press conference, quote, the Chinese government, out of the need to safeguard national sovereignty and basic norms governing international relations, has no choice but to downgrade its diplomatic relations with Lithuania to chargé d'affaires level. The Lithuanian government must bear all ensuing consequences, end quote. State media claims that the downgrade is, quote, believed to be a deterrent to some other European countries, warning them not to try to provoke China on key issues, end quote. We will see whether this threat has the desired effect or any unintended consequences for China-EU relations. Now quickly, while we're on Taiwan, for those that are interested, in an interview with CNN, US-based CNN on Sunday, former US National Security Advisor and former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger told the interviewer that he doesn't expect an attack on Taiwan from the mainland in the next 10 years, expressing, quote, "I think it is perfectly possible if the confrontation keeps growing, the Chinese will take measures that will weaken Taiwanese ability to appear substantially autonomous," end quote. Based on these comments from Kissinger, it appears that his view is more optimistic than the national security establishment in Washington. Okay, next up, let's talk about the South China Sea. But quickly, if you're enjoying the episode, don't forget to hit that like button. It's a huge help. It's the only way this channel will be seen by other people because it's a small channel discussing sensitive stuff. And if you're watching this for the first time and you're getting some value from this analysis, you want more up-to-date China analysis, maybe consider subscribing. Okay, plug over. Let's move on to ASEAN and South China Sea. On Monday, China hosted a special summit with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, in a bid to manage regional geopolitical risks. During the summit, General Secretary Xi Jinping announced that China has elevated its relations with ASEAN members to a, quote, "comprehensive strategic partnership," end quote. Previously, the relationship had been only a, quote-unquote, strategic partnership, to use Beijing's diplomatic nomenclature. State media in China reports that the elevation to comprehensive level signals that the PRC seeks broader cooperation. General Secretary Xi Jinping also expressed that China, quote, "firmly opposes hegemony and power politics in the South China Sea," end quote, and China will, quote, "never seek hegemony or to bully the small," end quote, and that the South China Sea issue will be, quote-unquote, handled peacefully. On the economic side, Xi also announced several major policy initiatives to boost economic cooperation, including, quote, striving to import $150 billion worth of agricultural products from ASEAN members over the next 5 years, end quote, doubling the current levels. While this is a great headline, it's unclear whether the target will be reached. Not everything went smoothly during the event, however. While addressing the summit, Philippine President Duterte criticized Beijing for its Coast Guard firing water cannons on Filipino supply boats in the South China Sea the previous week. And last up, is China now the wealthiest country in the world, the wealthiest nation on earth in the aggregate in terms of its assets? There has been a lot of media attention both in the Anglophone world as well as China itself about a recent report from management company firm McKinsey & Company claiming that China is now the wealthiest nation on earth. This is, of course, in absolute terms, not on a per capita basis. On a per capita basis, it is far from number one. The report argues that since 2000, Chinese wealth growth has represented 50% of all global wealth gains. The US has represented 22% of wealth gains and Japan 11%. Now, here is the critical finding. According to the report, in 2020, China's total wealth was measured at 120 trillion US dollars, whereas US wealth was only 90 trillion US dollars. The report found that 68% of global wealth lies in real estate. So that is what the McKinsey report claims. Are there counter arguments or criticisms of the report? Well, one of the best critical responses to the report has come from China finance expert Michael Pettis. This is what he observed yesterday. Quote, "Much of the world's wealth, as McKinsey measures it, consists of the value of real estate, and given China's real estate bubble, which has driven its value to more than twice that of the US and more than 3 times that of Europe, it perhaps isn't surprising that China's wealth now exceeds that of any other country. Perhaps it will come as no surprise that the last time a country's total wealth exceeded that of the United States was in Japan around 1990. Its share of global GDP at the time was roughly the same as China's today, and it was experiencing an even greater real estate bubble. Japan then and China today are the only 2 countries, according to the McKinsey report, whose wealth, as they measure it, ever exceeded 8 times their respective GDPs." End quote. Now, whether you side with the sentiment of the report or that of its critiques or critics like Professor Pettis, I want to read you this just to remind all of ourselves that we must always exercise caution when we make conclusions or predictions, forecasts into the future. These are excerpts from the Harvard Business Review in March of 1989. Quote, Japan today sits on the largest cache of wealth ever assembled. It has the power to move markets anywhere in the world. The market value of Japan, as measured by the extrapolation of real estate prices, exceeds that of the United States. Clearly, Japan has replaced the United States as the world financial leader. End quote. Okay guys, that is this episode of China Update. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you throw your comments below. As always, I always love hearing from you guys. Wherever you are, I hope you're keeping safe and keeping sane. I will see you next time on China Update.